groups. We can't do that without the resources of the state and NYSERDA, and we can't do that without the support of our municipality leaders. So here we are together to really make something happen. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan to do a quick intro, and then we could jump into some of the conversations we've had over the last year with many of you, the hub leaders and the P2P groups, about how do we make this a successful network. And we have some really good questions that we're going to get to in just a moment. So Dan.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. Yeah, I'll take over for a few minutes here just to kind of do two things. One, overview of how this originated, give you all a little bit of background, obviously see some new faces here, and then also kind of show you a little bit more where we're trying to steer this over the next year. So giving a little bit of background, as Renewable Energy Long Island, we received some funding from Rockefeller Brothers Fund over the past several years, and it's changed a little bit every year, and it's morphed to what we see as being a priority, with a focus initially started on community choice aggregation, to looking at community choice aggregation statewide, to connecting to statewide organizations, to last year setting up a peer-to-peer network of statewide advocacy organizations, trying to connect them with their community clean energy community coordinators and the clean energy community and climate smart community programs. And towards the end of that, we found that there was a really interesting, synergy that we were noticing between the work that we were talking about and regional clean energy hubs. Throughout the conversations, we had noticed people were saying, hey, like, how is this different from what clean energy hubs are doing? And we realized that there is, I think, an interest in now bringing in more so of those clean energy hubs into this conversation, and trying to connect clean energy hubs to their local advocacy groups and both of those organizations to their local municipal representatives. Just going over a little bit of what we kind of discussed last year for those who maybe, like I said, are new to this kind of peer-to-peer network that we're talking about here. Just get an idea of some of the concepts, discussions, even brief presentations that we had individuals from this group provide to everyone else in this group. I think it started with our Climate Smart Community Program. New York League of Conservation Voters, Joshua here, went over that program, research information that their organization had done, basically offering up themselves to speak with any organization or any municipality that might want to go through that process, as they have definitely worked through that process a few times with a few different municipalities they've worked with. So really interesting information that they've put together on municipal demographics, on who's engaging with the climate smart communities, and what steps they've taken to get there. From that, we also had Town of East Hampton, Deputy Supervisor Kate Rogers, City of Kingston, of course, Julie Noble here, discussing their 100% renewable energy plans. They've put together roadmaps and executed plans to get their municipality specifically to 100% renewable energy. How did they do it? Where was the backing? Barriers they faced, and things they've learned through that process. Sustainable Putnam, Joe Montiori, discussed his town's kind of barriers that they've gone through. Basically just trying to understand challenges in less resourced and or conservative communities that might not be as much bought into clean energy, energy efficiency, sustainability, as I think probably many of us here are. And then finally, where we saw this connection was we had one of our co-directors for the Long Island Clean Energy Hub, Kenneth Schlather, talk about what the Clean Energy Hub on Long Island is doing, and where they see the value and opportunities that they've seen in their past experience connecting with people across state lines, across regional barriers, regional boundaries, and why that might be really beneficial for all of us who are working in New York State, generally speaking, working on very similar goals. Obviously we all have our individual silos that we are working in on specifically, but there is this overall goal that we know about with New York State, with the Climate Leadership Community Protection Act, that we all are, I think, don't want to speak for everyone here, generally working towards trying to meet, and generally, through our own individual silos, a piece of that puzzle. So that was a big part of what we had done in the past year. But
Can
coming,
can I interrupt you for a minute?
please, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I also want to thank Julie Noble. She also presented with Kate Rogers, right? And compared the two different communities and how they have different roadmaps, but the successes that they had. And also Rebecca Evans, who was very helpful in identifying not only successes, but some challenges that face us all. So we really had a great collaboration of all.
Definitely, yeah, yeah. So with that, as we move forward now, coming into this kind of like next year of funding and effort here in this peer-to-peer network, at the tail end of that conversation with co-director Ken Schlather of the Long Island Clean Energy Hub, we wanted to integrate clean energy hubs into this conversation a little bit more, just because one, you all are diversified in your regions. Obviously, you know, the 10 major regions, or 13 or so, we should say, of New York State and the clean energy hubs, all that are therein. But also bring in some of the advocacy groups that are working in your local communities, and seeing if there's any conversations happening between the two and to your individual municipal representatives. We'll get into the questions later. I have a specific example, but I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit by jumping the agenda. So I'll kind of end it there before we kind of move on. If there's any general discussion, question, by all means. Otherwise, we'll kind of jump into just a few questions that we had for the group, kind of hearing some of your feedback, and yeah, again, where we'll take some of the conversation. So I'll pass it to you all. If not, Melissa can kind of take up the reins on the question asking.
Awesome. So if there's a question, please feel free to raise your hand or speak up, whatever works best for you. We decided as our first meeting to think, okay, how can we brainstorm ways where this is going to work for everybody? And so we have a different diverse background of folks on this call, and also diverse regions. So there's not going to be a one issue fits all here. So as we've spoken to you over the last several months, many questions arose. And, as I said, New York State has regional barriers. How can we bring together these regional resources to help with a clean energy transition, right? So some clean energy hubs, so this is like one of the questions that we had, is some of the clean energy hubs and communities may need assistance with working with the municipalities to adopt these clean energy transition. And they need municipalities to engage with. And we're hoping that this peer-to-peer network could help with that. That's one area where I think we could grow, is having more municipalities, staff engaging with us, because that's where we really need to see the change. So we're really hoping that that's where we could see some growth and some networking opportunities. So first question that arose, and I'm going to ask the question, and please just let us know what your thoughts are, is I guess the first question was what I just asked, is do you see ways in which we could help the clean energy hubs with bringing municipalities on board with what their priorities are, if we have partners that are in those areas? And I know that clean energy coordinators are going to be really helpful with this, because they're really the ones who are boots on the ground, and they're they have those contacts and connections, and we're hoping we can all engage with each other. But is there any specific input you would have about really connecting these clean energy hubs and the network as a whole to local officials?
So I'll jump in. 100%. Absolutely. I mean, we should all be working together to advance New York's mission to reduce CO2 emissions. In terms of roles and responsibilities, talking with Alonza, and who's the director for that department, and a number of folks within NYSERDA, our position here is to support the municipal governments. That's what the CEC program has been, and will continue to be, as well as the coordinator network, which, by the way, we have in place until the end of 26. So for the next 2 years, and likely beyond, we will continue to support municipal governments and position them to support the activities of the hubs. We've done so with campaigns. We've got, I think, hundreds of campaigns that have been supported by the CEC program and the clean energy coordinators along with the hubs. So I don't think the question is will we or can we, but we definitely will and we definitely can. But it's the specifics of how do we work together to continue to coordinate and make these programs work together seamlessly and effectively. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. And it's interesting. One thing that came up last year, and I hope we have some coordinators on the call today. I think it was unclear, we want to support clean energy coordinators. We want to do whatever we can to help move this movement forward. And don't, they engaged with us initially and they kind of dropped off a little bit. I think because their contract didn't specifically allow them to donate too much time to this network, but so we're kind of in that area. We do have some that engage because they want to, but some kind of step back because of that. And we want to, that's a barrier. We want to get over that. We want to bring them in. We want to, what can we do to make that a little bit more accessible or more collaborative when it comes to the coordinators?
Well, their primary objective since pretty much the inception of the program was to encourage municipalities to complete clean energy communities high impact action items. That's their primary objective, but also to support with any other nice sort of activities. So I don't know the specifics of, who stepped up, who stepped back or whatever, but in general, the ask is to support those efforts. And maybe we need to narrow down what the specifics are and find out like where there's either miscommunication or isn't the support that's necessary. I don't know what those specifics are, but I will tell you in general, their charter is to support municipal governments to advance their ability to influence clean energy decisions. But that might be mistaken. And I know there's a couple other coordinators on the call. Jason, I don't know if you want to add to that, but I mean that's been the directive to support those municipal governments and to work together with the hubs as the potential arises.
Great. And maybe this new collaboration with the hubs will bring us all together. Maybe that'll, help with.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but we just had a networking event with all the clean energy coordinators a couple months ago in Utica, and I specifically asked the question: is everybody working with the hubs? Is there a good communication and working relationship? And across the board, what I heard was from the feedback from like Todd Fabosi and some of the other directors that oversee, the different territories is yes, it's solid, it's good. In many cases, like for Central New York, they're also a hub contractor. So, as far as I know, there's good communication, but in coordination. But Jason, as you're on the ground, are you hearing different?
No, I think, one of the challenges is, I guess, who hubs are kind of geared towards supporting residents, where the Clean Energy Communities program is geared towards supporting the municipality. And so ways that we've found like intersectionality between our work has been through, like Chris mentioned, the community campaigns, because those are directly kind of reaching out to residents through the municipality. And another way that's not, it's parallel to the Clean Energy Communities program, but the Climate Smart Communities program, and connecting the regional hubs with the task force, because the task force also has residential representation as well as the municipal representation. So I think it's one of the important things is to find the intersectionality where the hubs can support the municipality, and that might not be through the elected officials. That might be through like a community development department or somebody who's not directly elected. And so I think to Chris's point, we do support the municipality and we want to, find synergy between our work and what the hubs are doing. But our decision makers may be different, or who our target audience is a little bit different too. And I think that's a little bit of the rub, I guess I could say.
And Christina, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I would agree with what Jason was saying. It's just a different focus. I work at the Capital Region Hub. where Todd Fabozzi is the director of our CEC support network, and we work really, really well with that group. I think an area that would be interesting to try to discuss on a call like this is making sure that programmatic design at NYSERDA is collaborating between those two areas. Like the community campaigns are incredible for getting the word out about heat pumps. However, the directive of the hub is much more about building envelope and about energy efficiency. And so we will do education on heat pumps in coordination with a municipality that wants to overtake that campaign. But the energy efficiency part of that being dropped was really kind of devastating for us. So making sure that one part of a NYSERDA program, such as the hubs, and another part of those NYSERDA programs, such as CEC, are putting out the same messaging and incentivizing the same concepts, I think would be awesome. And that maybe that's something we could discuss further here. But I think on the ground, the collaborations have been really good in the areas where there is overlap.
If I could jump in on, I wouldn't. It was taken out. It wasn't intentionally dropped for without a lot of thought behind it. So without spending a lot of time, the reasons why there was a lot of debate, discussion internally about not continuing to include that in the CEC program as it was. So you're right. We should make sure that we're collaborating more on those decisions as it relates to the impact of your ability as the hubs to influence decisions in the field. So that definitely makes sense. But I think it would be helpful to outline like what are the specifics that the coordinator network can do to support the hub activity and to support their constituents, as opposed to it being sort of an ad hoc, let's figure it out as we go on a regional basis. So perhaps that, those specific points could lead to more, more action, more opportunity, rather than just, try to do different things. I mean, certainly the campaigns are a clear path for the constituents to take action. And maybe at some point we'll add to that and change it and include an energy feature as we develop new initiatives. But it is a good point, and I know that it was impactful, but we should outline the specifics. How can the coordinators, with their relationships to the municipalities, along with our relationships with like the Association of Towns and Counties and Conference of Mayors and the other stakeholders that we work with every day, how can the municipality influence positive change that the hubs can run with and influence behavior, sort of in the field?
Thank you for bringing that up. And also on this call are these community members, right? These advocacy groups that I know the hub needs for successful campaigns. And we're going to get to a question about campaigns very shortly. But this is, the best part of this network is it's layered. We have a lot of folks here that could really help with these campaigns and with this interaction, but not without the help of the coordinators. Legislator Green, your hand is up.
Yes, I just want to suggest, and I've suggested this at statewide meetings a couple times, but it hasn't really caught on yet. I think it's really important that municipalities have tools to map potential renewable energy development. If we're pushing as hard as we are, and the energy efficiency component is great, but we're also pushing for beneficial electrification, which is going to increase the demand. And developers are not necessarily going to protect forests and farmlands and important natural resources. So we've been using the Scenic Hudson mapping tool, and I believe NYSERDA has a couple of tools. I've been in touch with Ian Latimer, and I think that getting municipalities to map the good and bad areas, or I should say the potentially good areas, if there was sufficient hosting capacity. And that seems to be the biggest obstacle. And I just wanted to suggest that there actually be points, that it be a high impact action, etc. And I do want to say that the energy advisors, hosted usually at Cornell, are extremely helpful and valuable. And I want to thank NYSERDA for underwriting that.
I would love to point out that Erie County has done a really great job of this with their Department of Environment and Planning. They've taken over a year and a half to map that out, making sure that forests and farmland that is able to actually farm on is all mapped out. So they may be somebody you'd want to reach out to see how they went through that process.
And not put on the spot, but like we kind of talked about a little bit earlier, that Julie Noble, I know that you at the city of Kingston at least have worked with even outside consultants to kind of come up with what is this net zero energy roadmap, which I'm sure kind of incorporated a piece of that, of where is a good opportunity, where are the good opportunities to potentially incorporate local renewable energy and not rely on maybe utility grade provided electricity.
We have, and we're working alongside the county to put together our own renewable energy implementation plan. It's about 50 pages long so far, and I hope to have a draft of it by the end of December. But we are building off of that 100% roadmap to 100% renewables that was done by a consultant. Now we're creating an internal plan by internal staff to get more into the granularity of it.
Great. We have a note here. Sarah, Erie County is a hub subcontractor as well. Thank you, Lou. I think this is an excellent segue here. The next question, which we think could really be beneficial to this network, is these regional clean energy hubs have opportunities to potentially provide funding through community campaigns and pilot projects. We're curious to hear, are any hubs or advocacy organizations and municipalities here discussing a potential partnership? Have they had a partnership? Do you have successful models of how, working with grassroots advocacy groups, elected officials, organizations, what has been discussed so far or has been successful model for such of a campaign or a pilot project?
I'll follow up with one thing there, which is I know with us with the Long Island Clean Energy Hub, we are just starting that process of reaching out to a couple advocacy groups, reaching out to a couple of municipalities within our region to get their ideas. We want to hear from them. Obviously, we could come up with a few examples of how we feel community campaigns and pilot projects could go, but this is where we see at least the hubs integrating and interacting with our local advocacy groups, our local municipalities, to hear from them. Like we obviously operate, in our own individual silos, but we know that those are the people that have kind of, in a different way, boots on the ground, with perspectives we might not see. So, for any of the advocacy groups here or any of the hubs here, do you have any examples of that, or are you kind of in a similar stage right now where you're kind of starting to hypothesize and hypothetically come up with community campaigns and pilot projects? And for the advocacy groups, same concept. Have you spoken to your hubs on this topic at all? Have you potentially recommended any ideas to your hubs of really areas where you feel like that money could be well spent in areas you might need that additional funding? Colin, by all means, take it away.
So I can speak for the Mid-Hudson Regional Clean Energy Hub on some of our thoughts at this point. And like you said, Daniel, it's definitely still in development. The hubs have been long and hard at work on some regional barriers assessments that are supposed to go to informing the use of these community campaigns funds, and that process is only just recently wrapping up and moving closer towards implementation. So still in development, but we have been working closely with the Hudson Valley Regional Council, who's the CEC coordinator for our region, on some ideas. And the conversations we've had and the ideas we've had is about aggregating campaigns in a way that is trying to align and fill in some gaps between what are ostensibly similar efforts between NYSERDA's clean energy communities campaigns, certain actions within DEC climate smart communities. You know, PE9 has some community education type activities that look similar, and then the hubs broadly do, you know, campaign type work on a kind of wide and constant cycle. And so what we're thinking of doing is to try and bring together in a more cohort fashion the active campaigns to try to align schedules, to align timelines so that, you know, campaigns sort of build a little bit of a resonance that all this stuff is happening simultaneously, that it's not these little pop off kind of firecracker type campaigns. And we don't want to also be duplicative. We don't want to try and fund a campaign that's already funded through something like CEC or CSC. So we're thinking at this moment of trying to leverage the money that the hubs have in our community campaigns budgets, to bring in more grassroots and kind of CBO organizations to do similar campaigns, maybe where a municipal campaign is non-existent, or where there is one that is existent, and can build upon it. That is the premise which we are still developing, still building, and we we're thinking too that CEC campaigns have done an excellent job of building broad scale awareness for the different NYSERDA programs that residents, small businesses, et cetera, can take, but in a field that is still a lot of carrots and no sticks. These are all voluntary actions. As Manna pointed out, the work of the energy advisors and these technical assistance folks to take someone who is generally aware that those incentives and programs exist and actually bring them through from interest to action and then keep a project on the rails is really, really important. So trying to align the hubs with those campaigns early on in their planning process, and kind of making sure that the energy advisors can be available to field inquiries not only helps the campaign be more successful, but it also helps us track its success a little bit better. There isn't really a good tracking mechanism. We got a lot of inquiries from municipal campaigns sort of as they were wrapping up. We didn't even know the campaign was happening, but then they come to us and they say, "Hey, did we get 25 installations?" And we say, "I don't know." So that's where we're trying to preempt that a little bit using something of a cohort model, but it's not fully vetted, it's not fully tested, just still in development.
Thanks. I think Long Island's facing that right now. We're in partnership with Town of Babylon, and Jess is on the call right now. It's our first community campaign that we're working with the town on heat pump, and we're learning. And one of the big questions is, you know, those numbers we need at the end of the campaign, and we're still identifying ways in which we could get all that information, all that data. So that's great. That's really interesting. So it's really about, so the hub community campaigns, the funding you have is really funding grassroots organizations to build upon the existing campaign. And would that be through education and outreach, getting that message out, or what exactly would that entail?
So the campaigns can be pretty diverse. I think a lot of people are doing it as educational and outreach kind of activities, but it's not, it just needs, the campaigns need to have a measurable tie to installation of or projects. So it doesn't need to be outreach only. It could be providing more gap funding to allow projects to move forward that would have had a customer contribution, things like that. Some of them, again, not vetted, not fully fleshed out in the capital region that we're discussing, one is based very closely on clean energy communities campaigns, but shifting the focus from municipalities to nonprofits, because there aren't really programs benefiting those organizations right now. And we do have a lot of nonprofit, you know, even houses of worship reach out to us. They may have had a Green Jobs, Green New York study and then they don't know where to go from there, and there aren't a lot of funding sources for them. So allowing them to be educational partners in a tech campaign, and then have incentives for doing their own building upgrades. That's one of our ideas. We also have a big contractor dearth in parts of our rural territory. So we're doing some thoughts for our pilots around workforce development in empower contractor trainings. And we are talking to some of our more successful contractors about mentoring new contractors, particularly maybe those working with the weatherization agencies who are capable of doing Empower, but don't often understand the full scope of that. So we have about 6 ideas floating around right now. There's a few, but they're, again, not vetted and not fully realized.
Excellent input. And I think it's important for those who aren't connected to the hubs yet is to realize that, and I don't know, which ones or how much, but there are resources for this, right? This comes with the contract for each of the hubs. And so this is a great opportunity for us to really think about as far as that transition to clean energy and how can we support the hubs and the hubs support us in this work. Jason.
That's how things will work with
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking about as the gentleman prior, Colin was speaking, was one of the things we try to do is connect the hub with the existing campaigns. Oftentimes it's like a community solar campaign, and so we'll bring the hub into the conversation as the campaign is developing so that they're a partner, so that once the community solar campaign is over, oftentimes a community will want to develop a subsequent campaign that kind of builds off the momentum of the previous campaign. And, because clean energy communities might not be like the campaign types in clean energy communities might not necessarily be the right fit, the hub could also be a potential pathway for a community to develop a campaign, with the hub rather than the CEC program, and then potentially tie it back again. I'm just trying to think about ways that we've tried to do this in Western New York and bringing the hub into the campaign development strategy early on to kind of introduce them to the municipality and start to try to build that relationship so that once their kind of phase 1 campaign is over, they can continue to work with the hub to do education and kind of build off the momentum of the campaign.
Yes, thank you. I don't know if I mentioned this, but Dan and I are both at the Long Island Clean Energy Hub, and that's where we really introduced to the resources we have. And Jesse is our first municipality we're really partnering with, and I want to thank, those in the past that have shared their experiences. So I know, Jess, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
Yes, hi. I was asking Melissa if this is even the right audience to ask, but again, I'm with the Town of Babylon, and we have a heat pump campaign currently running from November till May. And we do have 4 contractors part of the Green Homes program that we work very closely with. So basically, I'm trying to, at the end of every month, figure out how to collect the data for what we need to submit for the campaign. We're aiming for tier 3, hopefully to get, document 60 installs. And looking at some information we've got from PSEG, it looks like last year there were 240 homes that took advantage of their rebate. So we know that the installs are being done. I did some digging with our building department here, and for November, it turns out there was only 1 actual plumbing permit submitted where I can gather all that information that we need to submit. So what I'm seeing is that people are just not doing the proper permits. And I'm not getting the information of the contractors either. So my question is, do you guys have any tips on how to, actually collect the information? Because it's definitely happening out there.
Hi, Lou. Thanks for joining.
I was going to say, I don't have a great answer, Jesse, but we also are obviously on Long Island a very little bit removed and specialized in that we have a different utility than and then the rest of New York State here. So New York State, upstate, I mean, I consider upstate my mind mentally anything above, you know, the Westchester marker almost.
Yeah.
Who operate under a different utility and is provided that information potentially in a different way. So it might not even be applicable. I mean, us, obviously, we get that information through PSA&G Long Island and, you know, permitting. I don't know. I know that's required, but maybe not followed as much. So I don't know. I mean, everyone here, they might have a different approach, but if not, I'm assuming it's probably getting information through, you know, utility rebates. But does the utility upstate offer those type of rebates? I don't even know.
Had me like questioning my own sanity.
Okay.
Jess, I also know that I asked our community coordinator, Sarah Orrell, and there's really no example on Long Island yet, but I hear NYSERDA is willing to work with us on the best way to get that data. So there may be some flexibility there. But I know, like Dan said, Long Island is a different beast than most parts of the state.
One question, if I could, and Joshua, I'm going to put you on the spot for a second over here, which is just from a, you know, an advocacy group, a nonprofit that is working, you know, I'll consider it statewide. I know you have your specialized regions that you definitely do work in on a little bit more. What is maybe your perception as someone, maybe not as full